Hello, this is River Jackson. This is the first episode I will be doing in this podcast related channel. I have experience with speaking and live streaming in the gaming community, but I had since left it to work on my work, which includes theoretical physics, writing a book, which I am temporarily paused on, as well as a couple of other things. I do engage in musical creation, and I have a lovely cat of mine. If you care to look into more of my work, I have a Quora page where I have 930,000 views and no income, which is fine, and a nice, small, but very helpful fan group and friend group. I would say the fans are more like friends, and the fans themselves go away, which is fine. But as this is an introduction, I may as well include some more information, which is that I'm a 19-year-old on the spectrum and I have ADHD, so if I get caught up in thought, I do apologize. Um, I would like to figure out some way of demonstrating my personal life maybe in the future more. But without further ado, I will talk about the more interesting things. And thank you for coming on and enjoying. So I appreciate it. Once again, I will continue. So, about intelligence. What do we mean by conscious? Because I find it very difficult to get to the bottom of it, as I'm aware even the smartest of people have a difficulty with understanding what consciousness is. I do discuss with a friend and a close friend and associate who helps me, as well as me with his own work and me with my own work, in discussions on matters relating to the conscious world. And we had arrived at some definition of, well, as I may as well go to it and read word for word. I find um, that it's not really that complex. It just, the complexity takes, is what the complexity is, where the complexity is that it takes time to compute understanding these things. So he asked me what I was thinking about something he wrote, and he said consciousness is non computational but is manifested in the intercommunication of computational systems. In other words, we cannot solve consciousness in a finite time, but it is part of the communication within the computational systems, which are people, whom communicate with each other their consciousness or self awareness. And the self awareness is the character or identity where one is knowledgeable of what their self is. But the more knowledgeable of the self, the more of a character, I said. And I found this quite interesting because the thought development was not, it was not like that. It didn't jump from saying the computational ways, but how the character is defined. And um, I did represent a different paragraph, which I found interesting, in how he said, I trust that I store memories inherently because of my awareness of its presence as a context, a presence predicated upon the influence of the memory on my general processing system, which we can say the general processing system is somewhat guaranteed by life, and that the brain, hold on, itself allows for this development of the influence on memory. And I said, well, fake memories are still memories, right? Wouldn't you imagine? I do think so. It is possible. But it's dreams. So how far it's shifted until it cannot be observed, I said, is up to how much you process a real memory and extrapolate the hidden world within a dream state of a memory, like a dream. I found this very interesting because On intelligence, I would believe that the more character somebody has, the more intelligence they have because they're knowledgeable of the self, which is, by definition, partly about what intelligence is. And what I can't really understand about how people cannot perceive the intricate meaning of the self, um, it only stands from the fact that people who are maybe, let's say, less smart than genius, but still relatively smart, can assume that somebody walking is not fully self-aware because there are levels of consciousness. The conscious, I guess, field, you could say, is a spectrum, and this is already proved. It's not something that I'm saying just to get likes or upvotes, and especially in the context of my semi-formal uh, writing on Quora, I find it important to note a lot of what I say is me who comes up with it originally and is probably never heard of it anywhere else. And then there are things that I know that I write without absolute credit. It's not like it's a quote or anything. And I find this um, important to say because uh, in terms of myself, I'm not necessarily jealous when I see uh, people. I'm using similar context or definitions, but I am aware that there are people who are inspired by me and how I write. So, with that in mind, I like to make it very clear that um, the consciousness of how we perceive human relationships is also quite fascinating and interesting because I talk a lot about relationships, and I think they're very amazing and fascinating, mostly because I can find real love and still mess up. You can find a good partner and still not have a perfect idea of where you stand personally. There's a lot of ways that things can go wrong, even if things are mostly right. And I find that very difficult to accept, mostly because the reason that we can be conscious in one moment and not conscious in another is because maybe we're not mindful. Mindfulness takes a lot more than intelligence. Mindfulness is a wisdom, and mindfulness is not the same. It's not identical to intelligence, but there's a lot of different applications and areas and fields of intelligence. It's just the application process can be quite difficult, and it doesn't guarantee success either, even if you apply it. Which is why I'm hesitant to even speak on these things, because I'm not necessarily sure that it will do well. It goes without a doubt that I'm very I'm very keen on um, appreciating these topics, and I would like to make a career out of it. But it is not so easy to just say that you understand, which is another thing I uh, love to talk about in one of my quotes, which is make it till you fake it, which is you can be so authentic and so real that people don't even know you are are real. You can like I had started out in the first place writing on Quora. A lot of people had been very skeptical of, and probably still are if I comment again. Um, and as history goes with blocking, I find it quite funny that I still engage in immature play from time to time, but it's not something I like to get myself into. I'm not a conflict lover. It's just a consequence of being online and present online. Uh, so with consciousness, I like to keep in mind that in terms of human relationships, you can have arguments and debates and But there's a certain point where you have to cut it off. And I believe that if you want to make the right decisions in order to change, am highly I'm highly appreciative of myself, especially when it becomes an easier thing for me to do, and I apply not only knowledge or intelligence, but wisdom and an appreciation for the fascination of the topics themselves. So, in terms of an autobiography, this topic of mentioning the self is a representation of how you can be self aware, which I find very appropriate for this conversation in general. Um, Consciousness, as I like to call it, is as goes with an old thing I read online and recently again, an emergent phenomenon um, in, I guess, what you would call the conscious field, where uh, consciousness is applied to the living being through physical properties. And as a uh, wannabe or supposed or aspiring theoretical physicist with a lot of aspirations, and yes, I have made equations and theories that seem to be very consistent and truthful with proven formulas. I must mention, I find it Oh, yawn. I find it oddly acceptable to apply the theoretical physics knowledge realm to things. I find that uh, reality decomposing itself just to be reconstructed earlier is a fascination with the macro expansive areas of reality, where a field itself is in its entirety um, the whole identity of reality, but only quasi connectedly you can experience rapid dynamic change in a uh, macro expansive setting and not the quantum level. There have been moments where I've seen strange things and strange events happen in a manifesting like way, and deja vu, which has been given by um, theoretical physics knowledge like tachyons or uh, things that I've figured out and calculated. But that perhaps one of the greatest things about consciousness is that when you do become more aware of yourself, you can start to realize, well, there's something more going on with the structure of reality. And this structure is obviously governed by some physics that are not known yet. You can't just say that all physics, including theoretical physics, is true because, well, if it was true, it wouldn't be theoretical, it would be proven. But these things that are, as far as we are aware, proven are still theoretical knowledge, which I find highly annoying and irresponsible because I don't believe there's enough creativity going on in the in the realm of in the realm of theoretical physics, that those are the people who are creative. But the people who deny theoretical physics or physics in general are not really in the right space for making a judgment on that. I'm sure there can be spirituality at the same time, physics, because physics can, as far as we are aware, create anything in reality. It has infinite potential, just as humans have infinite potential, because reality does. And while it may not be statistically likely, it is possible. Uh, with this in mind, it's safe to say that the world we live in is very dynamic, and it doesn't go to show or prove that we are capable of governing everything as humans, but What we can do is manifest certain things. By definition, manifestation is far more simpler than black magic, and by the words that are used in a thesaurus I own, it says that it's a mode of communication where you it's not that you can get what you want, but it's that you can get what you want, because you can't always say that you want something and have it all the time. It doesn't just happen that way. So, I find that very complicated and interesting, and I would like to learn more about that in specific, just as I do with everything else. There's always an interesting piece of my mind that is fascinated with this reality, and it takes up a lot of my energy, and maybe you can sense it in my voice. I haven't been the most healthiest. I did get out of the hospital, uh, and earlier this year I was suffering from a fungal infection and hemoptysis, it's called. Uh, but with all that in mind, um, I can talk about dreams next time. I think that would be a very good topic to mention, as it is in par and in key with this one, and I guess more specific in general as well. If anybody does want to come onto the podcast, I would highly recommend you send an email to TimelySeeker@icloud.com. I would appreciate it greatly. And if you have any questions, you can leave a comment in the comment box. And thank you for listening. It's not going to be the longest, but since I don't have a podcast partner, but I do appreciate it, and thank you for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye bye.